the best people at anything, they're really focused. I want to go somewhere where the internet doesn't work.
Physical strength and the mental strength, where oftentimes we think of those as like separate practices. It's like, no, those should be both together, and knowledge is not valued anymore.
Excellence is actually easier if you apply it to everything in your life. How you do things is the ultimate game changer.
Yo, what up, guys? Welcome to the Strength Connection podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kurkowski. I'm so grateful that you can join me today. I have been a big fan of this guy for a long time. Zach Even-Esh, the founder of Underground Strength Gym, the SSPC Program, and the host of the Strong Life podcast, joins me on the show today. Zach's been one of the go-to strength coaches for decades. His daily work in Underground, in his podcast, and his YouTube channel, they're incredible resources. He's been a huge inspiration to me and to so many others, so I was beyond excited to chat with him. So such an amazing conversation. It's one of my absolute favorites, so let's get right to it, okay? Awesome. So if you like this episode and you want to give the podcast some love, please rate and review it wherever you're listening to it. And don't forget to subscribe and catch all new episodes that are going to be dropped every single week. All right, thank you so much, guys. Now let's get on with the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. And Zach, what's up, man? It's so nice to meet you. It's really an honor. Appreciate it.
It is great. And of course, we chatted a little bit before recording, and it's this, what's the thing? 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Did you ever hear that game where like everybody's connected?
Oh yeah. I remember that. Oh yeah. That's a great game. Oh, that's funny.
I never played the game, but I heard of the game, and it was basically like, everybody in some shape or form is connected to Kevin Bacon.
Yep.
So, you're telling me where you live. I'm like, oh, I've been to that area. It's beautiful. And then mentioning our mutual friend, Brian Grasso.
Yep.
Known him for, it's all right. So we're almost 2023. I think I've known him about 20 years now.
Yeah. Yeah. So BG, shout out to BG. I love you, man. Appreciate it. And no, it's like I said before, it's an honor to have you on. I've been a fan of you for a long time with the work that you do. You have such a great no nonsense, no sugarcoat approach to it. I equate part of that theory into you're from Jersey. I know quite a few people from Jersey, but I know just the work that you do and put out for Underground Strength with the podcast of Strength Life, Strong Life, which I believe is like 350 episodes or so now.
Yeah, we're I'd have to look at my notes. I think I might be at 349. Yeah, I just did this was 350. I just recorded 350 this morning. Damn.
Man, time flies when you're having fun, right? Yeah. Well, congratulations, dude. That's a huge accomplishment in itself, and I'm a huge fan of the show. I appreciate
it. The first ones, I didn't even have a title. That's kind of how I roll. I was like, I'm just going to start this podcast. It was a video podcast, which technically isn't a podcast.
Yeah.
But I did the first few episodes with no audio because I didn't know how to. Software has changed so much that I couldn't figure out where do we upload the audio. So I did the first episode with Martin Rooney, and then Eric Cressey was the second, or vice versa.
Okay.
But Martin and I, when we were chatting, he's like, you should just call this podcast the Training for Life podcast.
Yeah.
And it very much could have gone that way. Somehow, some way, I came up with I think it started as the Strongcast and it became the Strong Life podcast.
Yeah, no, it's funny, humble beginnings that you start with. I remember me and my former partner, Chris, when we started our first podcast, we were in our studio, and I think we just threw a cell phone up and just like recorded it and just stood back, and we were like screaming towards it. It's like, yeah, maybe we should get a different setup for this, get some microphones and stuff like that. But, sure enough, a few hundred episodes later, things pop up from there. So that's hilarious.
Old technology just changed how we had to do things. And I think that coming up in those times was you got very good at figuring out how to make do with what you've got, which works it works in favor for you in anything. Whereas if we take that today, everything is so convenient and easy.
Yeah.
I think that works against you, whether it's, I work with high school kids. So talk about how, hey, you could never leave your house. You could order food from your house. You can exercise from your house. You want to date people. You actually don't have to go out and meet people. You don't have to have a social life. So the whole thing works against your health, your overall, like if I look at health, it's like an umbrella with all these things under it. And so I think that that's why they say our generation will outlive that generation, or we will be older than they are and healthier and more capable than the younger generation, which is crazy talk.
Yeah. It's, it's interesting because with all the options that come in, I mean, you still have to do shit. And I mean, that's the thing. And I hear you, coin that all the time on the socials. It's like, I mean, that's the kind of one of the most beautiful things about physical training is you can't read your way or just kind of, use technology to get your approach into a strong body. You've got to put in the work. It takes time and it takes that discipline. I think that's why it's such an awesome, conduit for so many other avenues in life of get that physical side of strength first. And then the mental, the emotional, the spiritual side, you kind of have a reference point that builds into it. And I still think, I mean, with everything now in the youth, and you work so deep with the youth athletics right now. I did that for a while. I've been out of the game, for a bit, but my sister's a teacher. I have a lot of clients that are teachers, and talking about the youth mind right now is so different. It's like, I couldn't imagine having all these options when I was 16, 17 years old of everything, of the socials, of the dating and stuff like that. It's like, it's a whole different world in here.
They're distracted. All those distractions make it harder for you to get stuff done. And one of the early founders of Twitter, Tim Ferriss, always has him on the podcast. Dang it. Not, let me just reference my phone real quick.
Yeah, no
because
doubt. It's not Dorsey, is it?
I don't have his number, but I speak with his. Oh, I don't have it. Let's see. So, I speak with Kamal Ravikant, and it's his brother.
Oh, Naval.
Naval. There you go. So Naval said that social media, it makes you feel like you're doing stuff because you're busy. He's like, but ultimately you're not really accomplishing anything. He's like, so it's the game. It's a game. It sucks you in. You are busy, quote unquote, doing stuff. He's like, then at the end of the day, you realize you haven't accomplished stuff.
Yeah.
And he said, so the only way to win that game is to not play the game. And so he speaks so eloquently about life. And so does somebody like Derek Sivers, who I came across in Tim Ferriss's work. And those guys, the reason why I think they get a lot done, why they're writing books or they're able to invest in software companies, is because they are able to shut things off. They even leave places that are too noisy. Like Derek Sivers is in, I feel like he's in like Sweden or something, where he wanted to, no, he's in New Zealand. He wanted to get away from just the distractions in America. And I'm working on a book. I just finished it yesterday, but I remember thinking to myself, if I write another book, I'm going to have to go to a cave, no internet, no connection to my family, no anything. I don't want to be able to look at my phone. I'm just going to need a computer where I can type away and get it done. And finally, yesterday, I got it done. I was like, man, this took way too long. And I referenced like my first book I wrote. I put my phone on airplane mode. I was running my gym and the online business, and that's it. But now it's like my kids are older. I'm checking my social media because that's a big driver of traffic to the business. Oh, I've got to like do this. I've got, you're juggling 7, 8, 9, 10 things. How great can you be at 10 things?
Yeah,
exactly. The answer is you can't be great. You'll be good if you're lucky. The best people at anything, they're really focused and they're doing one thing really great. It's super rare to be able to juggle all this stuff. And, you mentioned teachers. So I work in a school as a full-time strength coach.
Right.
Kids sit in class with their AirPods in.
I know.
Dude, I don't know. How do you engage in a conversation with anybody? Imagine like, Mike, you and I are having this quote unquote conversation now, but I got one AirPod listening to something else. This AirPod's to you. how good, let alone great, could the conversation be?
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
insane,
Yeah.
and it's scary times, dude. It's
It's
scary times because they will run the country. They are our future. And
Yeah.
that's also my children, 16 and 14. Maybe it's just the school I'm in, but my daughter doesn't have AirPods in her ears while she's in class.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's like, it's almost like if you have your phone and like you're connected in, we think of it that way, but it's like you're connected when you're not even connected. You're like just instantly need to be connected if any type of notification pops up over it like anytime. So I remember when the first Bluetooths used to come out, and you'd see the people with it on the ear, and they'd be walking around, and I'm looking like, look at this fucking guy. Like, what the hell is going on here? And now it's like, I see people all the time, and it's like to have the phone out and you're talking while you're in line, like to order something in there. It's like, I mean,
my brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
I actually, yesterday, my daughter was over her friend's house, and right down the street is a, quote unquote, hardcore gym. It's got all this old equipment in there, a lot of York and Ivanko plates, powerlifting stuff, Lou Ferrigno plates are in there. And I said to my daughter, I go, what's interesting is that gym is known as a hardcore gym. And a couple months ago, 2 months ago, there was a power outage, and I'm at my gym. My son's with me, and he was going to train. The gym was pitch dark. The whole street was dark. I said, let's take a ride to Bradley Beach. We'll go to the fitness shop, it's called. And we go in to train, and it's a quote unquote hardcore gym. But like you said, there's a guy with AirPods talking to somebody while doing exercise. I mean, I could never focus like that, because when I was a kid, I remember reading Arnold's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And he spoke about the power of the mind to muscle connection. And when you're a teenager, that's hard to figure that out. But now that I'm older, I can really understand things like he said when he would do curls, he would visualize his biceps as a mountain peak.
Yeah.
And so if I'm training, I can like visualize like my chest muscles growing as I'm doing dumbbell benches. Yeah. I can really connect to it, but I'd never be able to do it. That would be like me podcasting with you while training. It would be impossible. But people were all over this quote unquote hardcore gym on having phone calls while training, or all on their phones. And so, the real hardcore gym I was at was in Diamond Gym, where the owner played the music so loud. And then I had read an article many years later, he did it to distract you from having a conversation.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
And I didn't know that, but it really added to the atmosphere. And nobody was like, Michael, I can't hear you. Like, you trying to tell me what you did over the weekend.
Right.
It wasn't happening. The music was too loud.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, it is. It's like, I mean, setting the environment up for training is so big. Like I see that now because, I work predominantly from home. I have my own home gym and stuff, and I get my work done. But there's times when it's very easy to get distracted in that time. That's why I have a small space, a small gym that I still just go to, just to go in, just when you need to get away and you need to change that environment up. And, I forget, I think it was like, even on like writing and stuff, like Stephen King would say that, like, even when he was writing a book and he would go for a walk and take a break, he would have a book in his hand, because he said he always wanted to be either writing or reading. And like, even if he didn't anticipate like reading, he would still have the book in his hand. He was setting the environment up for if he wanted to stop and just have that in there.
I think I've heard, I can't remember the names, but I've heard of many like prolific authors and writers. They would go away to a cabin in the woods. And so when I was writing my first book, I initially had a co-author. I was teamed up with somebody. I was introduced by them, by some like big name people. And in a long story short, my co-author, he like bailed out. He just quit, because they would like work all night and sleep all day. They were like vampires. And I had like a quote unquote, real job. I'm running my gym. And I'm like, hey, can we hop on, the phone, there was no Zoom at the time. And let's do it at like 12 noon Eastern, which they were in Vegas. So like 9 a.m. They couldn't do anything unless it was like 8 p.m. or 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, yo, I got kids. I'm like putting my kids to bed at that time. And then I've been working from 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. So I'm shutting it down. Couldn't do it. So after they left, I bought back all the photos they took, which I thought was going to be more money than what it was. Luckily, I got it all back. I was like, you know what? If I quit writing this book, it goes against everything I teach the kids, which is, stay the course, don't quit. Certainly there's times you should quit something, right?
Yeah.
You're in a shitty relationship, you have a shitty job, something's unhealthy and just crushing you, then you want to quit it. But I was like, I'm like, F this book, man. Like, does the world need another book on how to squat or how to squat a sandbag, blah, blah, blah. And then Hurricane Sandy hit and it like really destroyed our little beach town here. And I started thinking like, man, training has to transcend all, I had thought of that many times before, but I was like, I don't want to write a book about training. I need a book that's going to inspire people and change people's lives. So what I started doing was going away to write my book. And I remember one weekend, my wife got me like a bed and breakfast, like in the backwoods somewhere to write. And I drove there at night. So I was like driving through the woods for 10 minutes. I was like, this looks like where they filmed like Friday the 13th. Right. Like going in the right place. So when I left there during the day, it was so beautiful, but man, I was in that little B&B room.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I even had an iPhone. I think, I must have had an iPhone, but maybe I didn't have internet access in that bed and breakfast. And all I did was drink coffee and write and drink coffee and write. And being surrounded by the woods and the lake, even though I wasn't right in front of it and I started writing at night, something about being out there changed the way I wrote. And then I went to Lake George for 2 days to write. And I tell you, when I go to Lake George and I'm in the clean air and that water, that's my family's favorite place. And so you do need to get away. You mentioned like, hey, I go to a small gym sometimes. I think it's great to have equipment at home. You can do mini workouts. You can do full workouts. But sometimes you want to go to another gym because, no matter what we say, we still want to try to like, hey, somebody's watching me. I better like,
absolutely.
I'm going to add 5 pounds or let me do another rep or let me work hard because maybe somebody's looking at me and it's going to inspire them. And so the getting out of your normal environment it's uncomfortable. There's a little, there's this discomfort. There's a little edge that you have going on. And that's what we're saying about this younger generation is you don't need to be uncomfortable. Everything can be done through your phone.
Yes.
And I like it. I like that I can communicate with a doctor who's really dialed in and maybe is not in New Jersey. Maybe that doc, like I communicate with a doctor from Ohio and okay, thank God I could FaceTime him, but I want to be uncomfortable. I want to go places that push me out of my comfort zone because that is the only way you will grow. I say it a lot. I say comfort is the enemy.
Yeah, it is. It's weird. It's like going to that small gym. It's like I'm doing really the same workout as I'm doing at my home gym, but there's a nervous energy about it. Cause I've as a kid, same thing. I've had some, social anxiety and stuff like that of people looking at me. A lot of that stuff doesn't go away just instantly.
That's right.
And it's like, I'm in a gym. This is what I do. Even when I worked at like another gym facility, I would still once in a while would go to another gym just to change that environment up. It's like,
I still do it.
Yeah. And it's like, it's just that little bit of that mind shift and that energy. And I was going to ask you, like, when you went to that B&B, if you put yourself back in there and like all of a sudden now it's a wholly like new environment, did you feel that shift right away? Or did it still like take a little bit of time to get like, oh, okay, like I'm in a new zone. Now I can really focus and get this shit done.
I think what was so powerful. So I remember it was a while ago. I don't even think I was coaching at Lehigh. So we're looking at like 2013, something like that. When you, do you have kids, Michael?
No, I don't. Yep.
So when you have kids, the house is hectic.
Yeah.
And so when you have quiet time, you're like, what the heck? It's you could really crush the work. And so I get immediately into work time because I'm not taking my dog for a walk. I'm not doing all these things. Even my buddy, Joe De Sena, who owns Spartan, he's like, listen, he's like, ever since COVID and people working from home, he's like, there's no way we're getting as much done working from home. He's like, I get it. You don't have the commute. He's like, but if I want to ask Michael a question, I could just walk over to your cubicle and we can have a plan and we could get in front of a whiteboard and we can strategize on something. He's like, but then I'm going to try to call you at home. And now I realize Michael's food shopping. He's food shopping when it's supposed to be work time. Or you're like, man, I got to go to the dentist. I'll go now. You're not doing that when you're going to the office.
Yes.
Because you enter, you're just in another realm. And it's interesting in this like strength field to see some really strong people in their basement. And I think it's because they could see other people on Instagram lifting heavy. So they realize, hey, what's possible?
Yep.
But I still think that if you want to get strong, you need to be in an environment that pushes you where you're, commingling with other people. And so why was the original West Side Barbell so great? Because it was small and there was nowhere to hide. And same thing with the first underground strength gym was small. You couldn't go behind a dumbbell rack. My gym today is 2,200 square feet. My first one was this square box that I think was 1,400 or 1,600 square feet, but there was nowhere to hide. You could see everything. Whereas at this gym, I've been here, let's see, I think I've been here 11 years or 10 years.
Yeah.
I remember seeing like a kid duck down, like near the front. We have like a table where you could put stuff in, like duck down to check his phone. And I had never seen anything like that. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I swear to you, I thought there was like a hidden camera. I'm like, is this a joke? And then, kids would do push-ups behind the dumbbell rack where I couldn't see them. And I had to like relearn or upgrade my coaching abilities because I was in a new area down by the beach, whereas I used to be in Central/North Jersey, where it's a more like grittier, tougher area. I had different kids. Here I had kids that were needed to get built up. They were starting way lower than kids that I got from a different area in New Jersey. And I never knew that was going to happen. And so I learned that when I had multiple locations, even nothing was the same. Even though like the programming was the same, there was different types of kids coming from different places.
Right.
And so same stuff, but a different outcome. So it was really interesting how like the place, the environment that these kids grew up in shaped them. And same thing, like, I want to go right. I got to go somewhere away from distractions. What did Rocky do in Rocky 3? Apollo had to take him to the tough gym.
Yeah.
He had to get away from, Mickey told him, the worst thing that could happen to a fighter is you got civilized. You got this beautiful house, all the money. And then what happens in Rocky 4? He has to train in Russia. Get away. He had to leave his family. And that's a thing that boxers were doing decades and decades ago. They would do a training camp in the mountains. I mean, they would go to upstate New York. Catskills is Mike Tyson.
That's Mike Tyson.
Why? Because zero I mean, imagine now, how do people train for fights? Hey, record this. Hey, record me. I want to go somewhere where the internet doesn't work. Imagine fighters today. They got to record everything on Instagram. I mean, I think every athlete is operating at a deficit now because they're sleep less because they're in front of the phone all the time. And I would say humans in general are operating at a deficit because of the phone.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it's a Marvin Hagler's favorite or famous quote about like, it's hard to get up and run at 6 a.m. when you're on satin sheets and like silk sheets, after you get there.
I
and
heard
like
that recently.
Yeah. And it's like one of those, like, the things that build you. I mean, that's really, something in anything, if you're, struggling in business and you build a successful business, it's like the things that got you successful were the things that you did when you needed to do stuff. Now, all of a sudden you got a little bit of dough in your bank account and stuff like that. And you start living the lavish life and you get a little bit soft. It's a different type of softness, but it happened. But it's interesting on the youth front where almost they're coming in a bit softer of getting in. So like 100%. when you saw that kid like on the phone and like you never saw that before, what was the changes that like were in your mind? Was it like, I need to switch up the environment? Do I need to approach like talking to these kids before they even start, of setting the stage different? What were those things that
all of the above,
kind of saw that evolution?
All of the above. My website needed like a better screening process where it said, do not sign up. Parents, do not sign up your son or daughter unless they are hardworking and committed. Parents, do not sign up if now's not the right time, or I have to quote unquote think about it, or I don't know about my schedule, or I'm looking for somebody who's cheaper. I was kind of like I never had I don't want to say never, but I'm in a much more affluent area than what I was. If people down here were asking about money, is there a discount for if I live in this town and all this stuff? I was like, what the hell kind of questions are these?
Yeah.
And, a buddy of mine, Alan Cosgrove, who came up with BG, he's like, listen, sometimes you have to understand that you'll never have, the first location will never, the second will never be like the first. It's just not going to replicate. He's like, you got to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And there was a time where we were pretty slow and I was like, I think I'm just going to shut this gym down. He's like, well, you've done everything you can. You've done all the marketing. You've done all the outreach. If that's not the right place, then that's not the right place. And then all of a sudden we got busy. He's like, I thought you were quitting. It's like, I fucking don't know how to quit. That's a problem,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so these kids here, I had to build them up. I think my own coaching style changed also as my own children, started to grow up. So when I moved here, my kids were almost 2 and almost 4.
Okay.
So they were like 1 year and 3/4, 2 years and 3 years and 3/4 old. And as they got older, I learned to coach kids differently and to have kind of a little bit of like love in there, a little bit of compassion in there. Whereas my first gym was like, we're training to fight Ivan Drago. Everything was focused on win and dominate. And also I started engage, I guess maybe parents started engaging more with me and sharing more about the struggles that the kids were having, emotional struggles at school, confidence struggles. I wasn't getting kids that were high level athletes out of the gate. I was getting kids that were really low level, and now I had to build them up. And so my training has always been improving and evolving, but I had to get really good at saying, okay, this kid can't do a pull-up. This kid can't do a push-up. How do we reverse engineer all that? So that has been really big since opening and being in this location for 10 years. And I've always implemented it, but around here, I've had to implement it even more. And it's interesting, my wife always says, listen, we moved down here to get away. Our kids don't need to experience the way we grew up,
right?
It was just a bad area, like a lot of drugs. You always had like people threatening you in one way or another. There was bullies everywhere. Somebody always wanted to kick your ass.
Right. Yeah.
You're always looking over your shoulder. You got one eye forward, one eye, head on a swivel.
Yeah.
And she's like, we got out of that area so our kids don't need to grow up in that. And so I learned, like, if there's no threat, there's no reason, there's no deep inspiration for somebody to get strong. Like I did not begin exercise and strength training because I was training for sports. I did it because I was like, man, if I could put on muscle, people are less likely to bully me, to have sideways comments and just, instigate stuff with me because I'm going to look strong. And then, of course, as I got older, I learned, man, people really treat you differently when you're bigger and stronger. They start paying respect to you in a weird way. And it's probably because they get a vibe that you have self-respect because you're training, you're building this confidence. And so that's a big thing with me. You mentioned Strong Life Podcast is, real strength must transcend the gym walls. It has to transcend the weights. Can you take your lessons learned from strength training, exercise, whatever you want to call it, and apply it to your life? And, I look back and there was many lessons that people were trying to teach me that I didn't grasp. For example, in my late teen years, early 20s, I remember training at Diamond Gym. But when I was done bodybuilding, I would train during the daytime when it wasn't as crowded. And this guy, Carlo, was always in there with his wife. And Carlo was a competitive bodybuilder. I still speak with him. He's in Florida. And he's like, Zach, this training gives me the edge in business. He's like, when I go into a business meeting and I'm in a room of other entrepreneurs, he's like, I eat them alive. He's like, because I'm strong, I'm fit, I'm confident, I'm energetic. He may have told me that. I may have been 20, 22. I was finishing college. I was a first year teacher. I didn't think anything about business or entrepreneurship. And there he is telling me how this gives me the edge in other areas. It's not just about my abs or my arms. And of course, he had a great physique. He was a competitive bodybuilder, but it was cool. Like now I look back and I get those lessons. So I try to really share that with the athletes because I've got my private facility, the underground strength gym, and then I'm full-time in a high school. So at the high school, what I really try to get them to understand is excellence is actually easier if you apply it to everything in your life. Meaning, don't tell me I'm a student first, athlete second. What is that? What does that mean? You're an A in academics. You want to be a B- in athletics. Why not just be A+ in your academics, A+ in your social life where you're making the right choices, A+ in your commitment towards athletics? Why not just go A+ across the board versus I'm an A, I'm a B in this, I'm a C- here. To me, that means only one thing's important. Whereas there's, that I've seen some of those Greek philosophers, the quotes about, the strong mind is not, I don't know what it is, but a strong body and strong mind, they absolutely go together. And if you want to be a great academic, if you want to be a great educator, you can't have an unfit body because you'll never have a sharp mind. So a strong mind and a strong body, a sharp mind and a sharp body, they absolutely go hand in hand. And speaking of that, like you mentioned, having like a gym at home, the way we train today pretty much is we do one workout, then we're done for the rest of the day. And we're pretty much sedentary unless we're walking a dog or doing something else. Whereas I wonder if the philosophers or of course, the ancient Greece, they were active throughout the day. So it's probably, I always say it's probably much healthier to wake up in the morning, maybe do a little yoga, do some calisthenics, then you do some work. Then in the afternoon, maybe you do a strength exercise. Maybe it's a farmer walk or a deadlift and another bodyweight exercise. Then at night, maybe you do some stretching or kettlebell work, but you do these 10 to 15 minute mini workouts. They're not extreme. They're actually what we would call moderate, moderation. And that's probably much healthier for us as adults. But when you're an athlete, you actually need some extreme and high output work. But I think as we get older at home, it's good to do mini workouts because they don't kick your ass and then interfere with life, so to speak, where they make you so tired that they slow you down in another area. So it's like that saying, I have it at my gym, like, hey, moderation is for cowards. It's a Navy SEAL quote. As an athlete, you can't do moderation in the majority of stuff. You have to go high level. But as we get out of competitive sports and now we're just quote unquote training for life, you need moderation in everything. I'm going to have, moderate to high amounts of protein and then moderate fat, lower carbs. All right. It's kind of moderate eating. Yeah. My exercise is going to be moderate, because if I make it extreme, I'll probably destroy my knees and elbows and back. And then I won't be able to play with my kids, or, your girlfriend, your wife, whatever, you want to go hiking. My knees are killing me. My back is killing me.
Yeah.
Well, if you are moderately training, you can go and do a lot of stuff. And so I like to kind of I like to be careful with taking a blanket approach to everything. So the way I'll coach athletes is different than the way I will work with, men as we get older. So to say, I always say, quote unquote, get older.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I mean, definitely for athletics, if there's a specific, sport, something that you're really aiming for, you need some specific time to accumulate the volume and stuff like that, build that up. But what you mentioned about kind of the daily work, I mean, that's like, if you think about, if you ever did a day of being outside and you're gardening, you're doing work all day, like you come in and you feel tired, but it's this almost fulfilled tired that you did. Exactly. It's this work that you just utilized your body all the time. And the thing that I thought from that, Zach, is, there's this concept of mindset and the physicality and stuff. And the more I've, talked and the more I've, connected with people, it's almost those two need to be interchangeable. They need to be locked together. Yes. Where it's like, if you this is a little bit of my issue with just like blanket meditation or mindset work. It's like, if you're just sitting and, in a nice 72-degree day and you feel like really beautiful and you're talking about changing your mindset up, well, you're in this beautiful, comfortable, zone right there. Whether you do it for 10 minutes or 30 minutes, it's nice and cozy. Like you can really sit into that. Okay, there might be some merit to it, but if you go for, a hike or you do a workout while you're applying those mindset practices in there, and you're doing that a few different times throughout the day, now you're building up a little bit more of a reference point, to that. It's like if you just work hard in the gym as a young football player and you just mosey through practice and you don't apply that same mindset, well, if you're going to go into a game, and you can't, dial in that mindset of, going for the kill, then it's not going to apply over. So I think that's such an interesting thing of the physical strength and the mental strength, where oftentimes we think of those as like separate practices. It's like, no, those should be both together. And I think one way to do it is, do 10, 15 minute segments of it, all day throughout the day, and see how that applies. That might be a really, really good avenue.
You're getting regular practice. You're, what you said, like harnessing mind and body together. I absolutely believe, and I know, that exercise is a mind-body experience. It's not just physical. Mm-hmm. Although for the people who exercise while having a conversation with somebody else, they've removed the mental. You can't get better that way. You will not see change in your body. And I have a real unique story about that. So in my teenage years, I always say, I battled depression. I really struggled. I couldn't understand why I was so depressed. And in freshman year of college, I kind of got into my first quote unquote serious relationship. It wasn't serious looking back at it, but it devastated me when it ended. And for 6 months, I was really in solitary, had no conversations with friends. I would go to the gym still on the regular, Monday through Friday, or 3 on 1 off. I didn't gain any muscle in the 6 months. And, when you're 18, that is prime time to build muscle. Your hormones are flying. You should put on muscle just looking at the weights.
Exactly.
I built no muscle. Well, that summer I traveled to Israel. and I started getting around some real high level people, some friends that I had been around, a gym owner, a guy that was training for the Navy SEALs, and it changed my life. And within a 2-week period, I think I gained, if I'm recalling, I went from 185 to 197. So within 2 weeks, I gained 12 pounds.
Isn't that crazy?
And it's like, did the training change? Nope. The training was the same. Did the nutrition? Did I do something different? Nope. Nutrition was the same. You want to know what happened? Was my mind connected with the muscle. I went into a like hyper positive, optimistic mindset or mind headspace. And all of a sudden my body was like, now we can build muscle, because everything was connected. And that is when I learned the power of the mind. So when that happened, I was 18 and a half years old. So I was young. I learned the power of the mind. I started immersing myself in reading Tony Robbins' work.
Yep.
So this is before you could get, there's the internet and there's no YouTube or anything like that. So I was just reading his books. Every night I said, you have to read 2 pages of a Tony Robbins book. It would be 2 pages very rarely. Most of the time it would be 5, 10, 20 pages. I would just go.
Yep.
And so I would like go to bed with a great, final thoughts of the day, super positive. My sleep was better. And so that's been a habit I've been doing since my early teenage years, as I would always read bodybuilding books. Now I read books that are something that does like positive for me in the mind. And so I learned that without the mind, you will not build muscle or move forward in anything. About 2 years ago, I had a knee surgery, and I would go to physical therapy, and I saw a guy post ACL surgery on like it's not a leg press, but they sell them like in Perform Better. It's like a horizontal like leg press.
Okay.
But he was on his phone doing the single leg press. And I wanted to say to him, bro, you'll never get better doing that. And I've seen this a lot. A couple of years before that, I remember taking my daughter to PT. It was like a blend of physical therapy, chiropractic work. And I saw a kid rolling out for 5 minutes on his phone, just going through the motions. Now you'll get nothing from it. Training time has to be without the phone.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's the tricky thing too, is like for me, I'll have to record some of my training. There's times where I'm just like, the phone's staying in the car today. I'm not going to check an email. I'm not going to record anything and hybrid this into a little workout / promote it on Instagram, blah, blah, blah. Nope. It's just going to be for me.
Yeah.
Those workouts are 100 times better than if I have to record myself training. And so I try to minimize that stuff. So the mind is everything. The mind drives the body. And I've seen it heal. People have kind of healed themselves. You heal faster. And it could be applied to, outside of humans. They've done this with dogs with cancer. They take dogs with cancer and bring them to like a dog like farm where the dogs are running around healthy.
Yep.
And the dog with cancer forgets that he or she is sick. And because the dog is running with other healthy dogs, and it like eradicates the cancer from the dog's body. It's pretty wild.
That's crazy. It's interesting. There's so much different, research on this. Even people, humans with cancer survivor, there's a lot of studies about just a belief in a higher power, is one of those things of it. The power of the mind of, getting through something like that. But that's why I got into hardstyle kettlebell training. It was that difference of like just going through the motions of training from machine to machine to now like, oh, like this is like you're in an athletic movement. You need to know what your feet are doing, what your hips are doing, bracing your core, getting your breath down, like everything needs to be in a line. And I think you said this in one of your podcasts of like, knowledge is not valued anymore. It's like, we have all the knowledge. So that guy's doing the right thing.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah. With the leg press, but completely disengaged of anything else. And we just
doing the thing. And when you said kettlebells, I'm like, okay, what if I say, Michael, I'm doing kettlebell snatch or kettlebell clean and press. and you'd be like, hey, that's what I do. Are you an RKC? Is that or do you have a background?
Yeah, strong first.
Strong first.
Yep.
Hey, I'm strong first. Yeah, but Michael, I'm doing the same stuff. But then you see me like smashing my forearm, my wrist, my hand position is shitty. My breathing is off. Every time I put the kettlebell down, my back is round. Dude, I just went from, let's say we both start at 100%, our grade is 100. I pick it up wrong. Now let's just say I'm at a 75 because I picked it up wrong. Now my hand position on the kettlebell's wrong. All right, that screws everything up. Now you're an F. You're at a 60. Now your arm is too far away from the body during the kettlebell clean. Now you're just like, I'm just giving you a 10 because you touched the kettlebell.
Right.
So I'm doing quote unquote the same exercise, but I did the whole thing wrong.
Yep.
And so it's not what we do, it's how we do it. This is why you and I, you could drive your car, but do we race in NASCAR? Do we pull up and say, guys, I'm ready for NASCAR. I'm ready for Daytona 500. They're going to say, yo, what the fuck are you guys doing here? We do the same thing you do. We drive cars, you drive cars. Well, yeah, they're driving cars, but how they drive the car is infinitely different. And so everything is how you do it. You know, on Twitter, I posted about like, look, we're seeing athletes tearing ACLs, UCLs. We have more ankle strains and sprains. We have we have more injuries than ever before. Yet sport clubs keep saying speed and agility. Yeah. What speed and agility do I need? Why do I not need to build muscle mass and strength and stability? And the reason being is we have, unqualified coaches, and I use that term loosely as a coach, who are just copying stuff off YouTube randomly and then kind of like throwing paint against the wall. And so kids are doing stuff, but they're doing it really shitty. There's no proper application of it. And so somebody said, well, kids are lifting more than ever before. They're going to gyms more than ever before. I go, yeah, but have you seen them in a gym? Yeah. They sit on machines. They sit on their phone. The technique is dangerously incorrect. They lift either too heavy or too light. They just don't do it the right way. And so application of the thing, right? Expert coaching, expert application, expert implementation is the difference maker. This is why I always say, if it's all the same, how come we don't all bench 600 pounds like the guys at Westside did? I bench, they bench, it's the same stuff because it's their atmosphere, it's the coaching, it's how they do it. And so how you do things is the ultimate game changer. I cook food. Do you cook steak? Right. Yes. But, and look, sometimes I go to a restaurant, I'm like, damn, I could do better than this guy.
Exactly.
But for the most part, I always say, hey, you just because you cook in your kitchen doesn't make you now a chef who could open a restaurant, or a chef doesn't necessarily become a good restaurateur, right? You need a businessman, a businesswoman to run. Yeah. So that's how I look at things, because we're in a place where, like you said, knowledge is free. If I want to be an expert at anything, if I want to learn how to be an expert in like fitness for diabetics, for men or women in their mid 30s and older, I could just study all YouTube and read articles, and I could be an expert easily by immersing myself.
Exactly.
Not many people are immersing themselves. They're watching a few minutes of a video, if that. Most videos people won't watch longer than a minute. Look at what's exploding on YouTube now is YouTube Shorts, 15-second videos.
That's it. Yeah. And then go right to the next.
How deep? There's no depth. How, I want to be an inch wide and a mile deep. I don't want to go a mile wide and an inch deep. I get nothing out of it. If you want to get something out of it, you're going to have to go deep. That's the truth.
Yeah. It's funny too, that like still there's almost a stigma around the physical side of it. Of people think, oh, I've never exercised before. I just by doing it, I'm doing the right things, where we don't think about that. And really anything else you mentioned, like cooking, like, you know that you're a shitty cook the first day that you go in, and it's like the same thing. Like if you're a musician, if you can watch everything possible about playing the piano, and you can listen to Mozart and all these, but unless you have your fingers on the keys and actually playing around with it, like you can't build it. You got to approach the physical side of training, in the same way from there.
You need a coach. People need to get coached if they want to go beyond good. You mentioned like the intimidation factor of going into a gym. I had to get a new iPhone like 2 months ago, and I was in the iPhone store for like 2.5 hours because I don't use cloud. So I had to use cloud. They had to transfer everything. And I thought to myself, man, I am in a bubble, because I think there's a lot of people exercising. Hundreds of people walked in and out of the store within 2.5 hours. Hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
Not one person looked like they did any exercise. And that's when I realized, like, it's not as common as we think, going to the gym and exercising. And, that's what Planet Fitness was originally built for, was all machines. So people who were intimidated could just sit on a machine, and the instructions were like taped to it or whatever, glued to it. The only plate loaded machine there is a Smith machine, and the weights were light, so it didn't attract strong people.
Mm-hmm.
It was done in an effort to bring people in who were afraid to exercise, who needed it.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know if that's helping or hurting people. And also, because it's so cheap, like $9.95 a month, there's no pain
skin
involved.
In the game at all. Yeah.
No skin in the game. So, all right, I haven't been there for 5 months, $50, not even. So what? $50. So if it's under $20, it's been shown to like fly under the radar on a credit card. Like it's more of a hassle to cancel the thing than to, so they just leave it. And so Planet Fitness said, hey, let's get rid of paper, so we don't have paper costs. Just, you want to sign up, you go to the computer. We don't need any coaches here. So it's not going to be, we're not going to have like a high level employee.
Yeah.
We're not going to have high payroll. The weights won't be heavy. So we're not going to attract people who break stuff and disrespect stuff. And everything will be a machine. And so there will be no injuries because they're locked in on something. And so they created something that was for people who had gone through like a nationwide survey, who had like maybe high blood pressure, overweight. But the main thing, the reason why they didn't go to the gym was it was too expensive and or intimidation. So they said, all right, let's make it super cheap. Let's remove the intimidation factor. But now those people are probably not going to the gym. I think Alex Hormozy made a video.
I was going to say Hormozy's video on it was brilliant.
Was it less than 10% show up?
Yeah, it's and it's kind of, if you think about it, it's sad, but the way that they modeled their business on a cash grab aspect of it was genius, because they targeted all the people that want to make a change but don't want to put the effort into it. So they worked on that. Like, what do you need from there? No skin in the game, easy to go in. It's like you said, you don't even see it on the credit card statement in there. And I actually knew one of the guys who handled their credit card declines, as a lawyer, and they have, 40%, I think, or 50% of them decline afterwards. They just keep kind of charging it over and over again in there. So, but they just know, like, okay, we are signing up people that we know are not going to come to the gym.
That is insane.
It's terrible. Yeah.
I met one of the guys who was like one of the founders. He was a professor at NYU. He was a economist. And I wish I could remember his name. He spoke at Joe Polish's Genius Network way back then. We're talking like 2010, maybe 2011. I know I had his book. His book was great, but every few years I just go donate my books to Goodwill, because otherwise I would be like buried under books. But yeah, he said they surveyed the country. People had health problems, and then they said, why don't you go to the gym? And it was like, we're intimidated and the money. So they just said, hey, let's remove as much overhead as possible. No paper. So all computer, And like you said, I don't think they knew that like 10% of people were going to show up, but you know what sucks too on the flip side of that? You know what people will say to me, Zach, you care too much. You're always worried about who's not showing up and why they aren't coming. Like, just focus on the people that do show up. And I'll do things like, if somebody is signed up as a member and you don't show up for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and you don't reach out to me, I cancel you. I don't even want your money.
Yeah.
Okay? But you know what people say to me? Don't cancel them. That's their job. They're supposed to cancel you. And I get that too, because from a business perspective, they've signed up. There's an agreement that they're supposed to put in the work. Our website states who we train. And if you're not showing up and you can't send an email to say why, like, it's, you know, the phone is glued to people's hands.
I know.
So we're in a strange world, in a strange place. I mean, I don't really know what the future is of stuff.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I think we're going through such a weird place with our, you know, government, our president. You know, it's like, I feel like, you know, other countries must laugh at us because, you know, United States was a feared country. We were strong. We were like, you know, we were capable.
Yeah.
And now we're really going in a weird direction, even in the schools. And that's a big place, a big time where minds are shaped and formed, is those school years. And look, they're being exposed to, like, hey, you could do nothing and, you know, you'll still get an 85 because we don't want to hear your parents complain. Well,
right.
I explain to athletes, like, listen, what if I had your energy level? If I was yawning, if I was going out, checking my phone every 5 minutes, is that the coach you want? And what if I come in to work and I go to the principal and I go, you know, can I just not do this today? They'll be like, bye, you're out. And so they're getting the opposite. Like, they don't have to do anything and they're still getting the end result. Here's your diploma. You get to keep this. Whereas that's not how the real world is going to work. Eventually you're going to get to a place where you have to work. You have to put in effort. You got to show up and you got to be reliable and accountable. But that's not being taught in the schools. They think it is, but it's not, because administration doesn't want to deal with complaining parents.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which turns into an enabler. But you know, it's interesting, Zach, because I think maybe this is just the naive optimist in me and stuff. And it's like, I think ultimately the right people will rise to the top. And I think just a little bit of encouragement on it, you know, quick story. And I know we're running short on time here, but I remember when I was in high school, the first time I was ever in a weight room, I was a freshman in high school. And for some weird, odd reason, I got into the gym class with like all the juniors and seniors, just kind of out of a weird scheduling type thing. So all of a sudden I go in and it's like, as a ninth grader, like you go in and all of a sudden, like there's men and women in your class, you know, it's like, there's like, it's super intimidating. And I didn't know shit about anything. So there was like a little corner in the weight room that there had some weights already on. It was like a bunch of like 5s on there or something like that. And I did a bunch of shitty reps of a bench and, I started taking all of the weights off of the bar, not knowing that you need to like take them off evenly.
That's right. And
this kid rolled up. I'll never forget this kid, Will. He was like a senior. He was on the football team, great looking guy and stuff like that. Like somebody's like, wow, like if I'm like that in 3 years, that's awesome. And he came up to me and he's like, hey man, he's like, he's like, you got to just make sure that you take them off both sides on it. All right. Hey, you got it. And then just kind of walked away and just kind of a little like short wink. And just that little, like, I thought he was going to be like, hey, you fucking idiot. Like, what are you doing? It's like, and that would have just been it. Cause I was just very nervous and shy.
That could have screwed up your whole.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just that little bit of encouragement. And this is like, you know, this is 20 something years later. And I still remember that story. So I think whether you're a coach or whether you're even just an enthusiast in a gym, like just encouraging the people around you.
Try it like this. Hey, just keep your elbows in, try that. What's so funny is when you say that is years ago when I had my first location, I was sharing the parking lot with a commercial gym. So once in a blue moon to change it up, I'd go in there. And I remember trying to help a high school kid and he's like, no. he was doing cable rows and like really like leaning back and doing it wrong. I was like, you want to go with like your chest up and be vertical? He's like, no, that's not really what I'm trying to do. Somebody else showed it to me this way. I was like, all right. I was like, okay, what do I know? So it was interesting that some people don't want to learn. I had a kid a couple of weeks ago have a meltdown in the weight room because I kept telling him to squat lower. I mean, he had an absolute meltdown, like something that would have gone like YouTube viral. He was screaming, crying. He cursed at other kids because I kept saying, you got to go lighter. You have to squat lower. And I'm like, I've been telling you to do that since June. We're, 6-7 months of that. And he had a meltdown. And so the weight room is a place to build confidence. It's a place where people learn to take feedback. But it's these coaching books today are always like, you have to be like, hey, how's everything going at home? How's your sister doing? Da, da, da. We can't do that all the time. Especially I might train 50 to 75 athletes in a group, just me.
Right.
I don't have time to say, Michael, I know your sister, she had a boyfriend and it didn't work. Is everything okay? Are you like, dude, I got 49 other people going on. And so, it's a place where you learn like to get feedback direct. I remember I worked at GNC freshman year in college. So I was 17, turning 18. And I took a lunch break and I'm eating. And a guy that I used to wrestle with in high school worked at a clothing store downstairs. And he's like hanging out near the office where I'm eating. And so the guy, Mike, who owned the place, he's like, listen, that's fucking bullshit. I can't remember. The guy's name was Jimmy. He says, fucking bullshit. He's like, I'm out here working. You're eating lunch. You're fucking bullshitting. He's like, that's not how it works. And I said, you're right. It will not happen again. I'll make sure that I just eat my lunch and I'm not getting stuck in a conversation.
Yep.
And then at the end of the night, he's like, listen, I didn't mean to come down on you hard like that. He's like, but we had people in here and I needed you on the floor. And that guy comes in here and he takes away your time when I need your help out here. And I was like, no, you're right. I was like, you're right. I'll close the door next time or if he's coming up here when he has a break, I'll let him know that I need, I need to eat and I got to get back out on the floor. He's like, I appreciate that. But I look at like today, if somebody did that, the kid would never return. He'd be like, oh, Mike yelled at me and I quit that job. And they wouldn't even say I quit. They would just send a text message or they would not show up.
Or just should not show up. Yeah.
And so to me, that's a big part of what's missing. When I grew up in these gyms without headphones, you were forced to communicate. You had to have the, like confidence and the guts to just ask somebody who was bigger than you, hey, can you spot me on this or ask for advice? And so you learned communication skills. Today, they don't learn that stuff. And that's why I look at like my gym as a place that's more than just strength and conditioning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I want these kids to build confidence, to learn communication skills, to be problem solvers. Listen, are you waiting for me to put the barbell in the squat rack? It's not going to work that way. Mm-hmm. There's 3 squat racks. I need you to organize in height order, plus or minus 1 inch from one another. And I need the squat rack set up to your collarbone. Yeah. Once you do that, carefully get a barbell in there. And by carefully, I mean, you're aware of your surroundings. And so if you don't teach kids that, they're waiting on you to do it, or they'll take a barbell and kind of like spin around and knock somebody's head off with it. So we, as coaches, as strength coaches, my message to my coaches on my team is like, we're not just getting them better for sport. We need to get them better at life.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing every year is kids are showing up like they can't make eye contact with you. They're nervous. And I get it. I remember being a new kid in a gym. They're weak. And so they're kind of getting thrusted into the fire. And so sometimes I go back to the early days where it's like, there's no like easing them in. It's kind of like getting to the truth and saying, listen, you're playing football and you can't do a push-up. Is that good? That's not good.
Yeah.
Do you need me? Do you need to pay a strength coach to get better at push-ups, or could you do it at home? I could do it at home. Okay. You're going to wake up every morning and do push-ups. You're going to do it after school, and you're going to do push-ups again at night. You're going to get better without me. Okay. Because push-ups is something you could do on your own. And I also say the media we consume, I think has an impact. So I'm a big Rocky and Sly Stallone fan. So I watched Rocky 3 when I was in 3rd grade with my older brother. And I was like, man, we gotta go running. We need to do push-ups. We need to do curls. And so he had money from, I can't remember what job he had. I had a paper route. So we put our book bags on in the summer. We went across the highway, which was like, God forbid you drove across the highway. It was like you could die. We went to Herman's Sporting Goods, bought 40 pounds. He put 20 pounds in his book bag. I put it in mine, rode our bikes home. He had those spin lock dumbbells and barbells. And then we just started lifting weights at I was 8 years old and thinking it's normal.
That's awesome.
8 years old is a baby.
Yeah. Oh,
but,
that's so
you know what I'm saying? I just thought it was normal.
It'd be a news story nowadays of like child abuse of the 8-year-old.
I thought this is what you do. You do push-ups, curls, and you go running. Today, kids don't run. You know, running for me. Whoops, sorry, bro. Running for me was a mode of transportation.
Yeah.
Hey, I gotta go up the street. Okay. You're running there.
Yeah.
You know, I have kids who might live 3 blocks away, get a ride to the gym. It's bad. Yeah. Michael, we're in a pretty bad place, dude. I think I see a lot of it. I see that stuff. To me, that's bad.
Yeah. And I do. And that's why I like following you and coaches who have done great stuff with youth athletes, because I see the work of the kids that are in the gym and they're working hard in there. I mean, and they're doing hard stuff. It's like, and that's the thing. It's, you know, I think especially the youth and also like the senior population, like think that they can't do like hard things anymore. I've worked with a lot of, you know, older population, 60s, 70s, 80s, lifting heavy stuff. It's like getting after it and like working it. You do it in a safe environment, but they can like, that's the way to it. Like you said, it's like not the question of, hey, is everything going okay at home and stuff like, it's like, no, get after it in the gym, like build that confidence up. Then you can ask, then that even opens up a conversation if they need to do that. And it stops open versus, you know, kids having meltdowns and stuff like that.
You're right. Begin with the work. And I turned 47 a couple of weeks ago. If I look back 20 years ago, I don't know if I thought I'd be deadlifting and doing power cleans and jumping and sprinting. But from what I recall, in my younger years, the guys that were a little older were like, wait till you get to my age, wait till you have a family. They were all these excuses. I'm training harder. I always say, man, I wish I did this when I was in high school, trained just like this, because I would have been a killer. You know, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And you're right. You get older, it's actually more important to be strong as you get older. I mean, there's a million and one reasons we could get into it, but obviously it's healthier for you. It keeps you in such great mindset. As we get older, especially men, they do less stuff with friends. Women continue to have date night with their girlfriends. Men become like recluses. They're like, I'm just going to do my thing. But if you're going to a gym, now you have camaraderie. You have friends, you've kind of got this team. And I also think as a dad, if I don't look strong, my family becomes targeted as victims, right? I think like criminals target people who look like that's an easy target. He doesn't look strong. And so for me, it's important to look strong, not just be strong.
Yeah. I think that's the important point too. You talked about the kid, like of doing push-ups in the morning. I think that's a really important piece for anybody, but and no joke. I do like the mind boxing stuff I learned from Sifu Singh every morning. It's like a Tai Chi, just getting into emotion, then get into training, and it feels great. You know, I mean, I'm almost 40 years old, and even thinking out of outlook long term is still challenging for me. Imagine being a young kid thinking the long game and the big picture. No, it's like wake up in the morning and do something, build the habit of it.
Most of our kids are, when they're done training with us, they continue to train. Most, not all. When I see those who don't continue, I ask myself, where did I mess that up? Why did he not fall in love with it? And of course, I love to see when the kids fall in love with training. Yeah. Because I know it could change their life and save their life.
Yeah. No, I know. I love it. You had a great story about a kid who was it, Anthony, I think, or Tony, who's the champion. Yeah. And
love that kid.
And the quiet kid never really said anything. You don't even know if they're really into it or not. Then all of a sudden you realize, holy shit, they're state champions. And those are such cool stories.
He works with his dad now, and his dad's like, big into real estate and like manages like apartments and stuff. So he works with his dad, and he just took that work ethic and applied it to that. And we knew, everybody who was around, he would be successful because he was a worker, and he was crazy undersized. He was crazy small, but his work ethic made him unstoppable. And then he got so damn strong. He just did everything right. Yeah. And it's all basic stuff, but it's not just what he did, it's how he did it. Man, was he committed.
Yeah, dude. Awesome. Zach, brother, this has been so awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to me today.
Thank you, bro.
Keep doing what you're doing, man. If people want to follow you, if they haven't already, what's the best places that they can go check out your stuff?
Strong Life Podcast. The newsletter almost daily is called ZachStrength.com. That's the website. That's the Strong Life newsletter. And on social, Even-Esh, Zevenesh, pretty easy to find. So YouTube, Instagram, all that. We have a lot of free stuff for people to dive into.
Awesome. Dude, thanks, brother. Dude, I'd love to have you back anytime, man. I really appreciate it.
Part 2 for sure.
Absolutely. Guys, go follow Zach. Thank you so much. Check it out. Peace.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.